See if this still works. Hello! I wanted to do a video talking about AZ-900, the Microsoft Azure Fundamentals qualification, which I sat successfully, thank goodness, on Monday. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the qualification, why I did it, what I did to pass it, and just general thoughts around it in general. So yeah, AZ-900, Microsoft Azure Fundamentals exam, which talks through the fundamentals of using Microsoft's Azure cloud development platform, which Azure's crazy in terms of what it can do. It's absolutely insane, and it's a real pleasure to have been able to start learning a little bit about what's going on, what it is, because there's just so much potential. Yeah, and so basically this qualification is the starting point for learning about this kind of stuff. I was asked to do it because I've got myself a job. I've got myself an internship with Nightingale HQ, who are fascinating, really, really interesting company. And though that's starting in July, I've got a bit of downtime, so they suggested that I take some qualifications which will support that kind of work, and AZ-900 is the first of them. Currently, it is free to take if you are a student through a company called Cloud Ready and through their Cloud Ready Skills program, which I think is linked to Microsoft in some kind of way, but I actually don't know. If you're not a student, if you don't have any affiliation to an educational institution, then it's about $99 US, depending on whatever. And then depending on whatever currency you happen to be in, but it'll be around that kind of cost. I managed to pass the exam in 10 days worth of work, having not used Azure before, to passing in 10 days. This is dumb. Don't do it. I think that is nowhere near enough time to do something like this. I've seen a couple of videos of like pass it in 8 hours or anything like that, and it's like the book that I use the most is 300 pages long. There is no way I would recommend in good conscience people try and do it in a short amount of time, unless you've got pre-existing Azure experience, in which case, sure, probably you could pull it off, maybe, but if you're going entirely cold, then no, it is considerably more than 8 hours. I generally think around about a month is a good amount of time to work on it. Maybe 3 weeks, but still not 8 hours. And in those 10 days, I worked pretty solidly on it. I was also ill. But still, I think it's quite a lot of stuff to cover. So, yeah, the exam itself, broken up into 6 sections. Microsoft is super open about what those sections are and what is required to be understood in those sort of contexts. And there are loads and loads of resources, so I'm just going to go through a few of them, which I thought were useful. So Cloud Ready Skills, the company who actually provide the scheme by which it is free, that kind of stuff. Reassemble that into a sentence that actually makes sense. They provide like an 8-hour Vimeo like crash course sort of thing, which they put together with Julian Sharp and Andrew Bettany. That's really good. I watched about half of it. I didn't finish it, but it's great. It's lovely. There are all sorts of YouTube videos. Special dedication has to go to John Saville's technical training. John Saville's videos are absolutely incredible. He is a phenomenal educator and communicator. I really think the world of his videos. And not only does he do 8 hours worth of individual videos, which to me, I think is around 36 videos. I might be wrong. I might just be pulling that out of thin air. He's then put them all to. He's then made a crash course which is 3.5 hours long, and that is really, really great, even just to sum up a lot of core concepts. Really, really interesting. I think the world of that particular video. Also, Free Code Camp stitched together a lot of short videos into their Microsoft Azure Fundamentals certification course, AZ-900 video, which is really nice again for kind of like short bite-sized chunks. So I went through that. One of the really underrated sources of information are humans and groups and being able to ask people actual questions. And so I found via meetup.com the Welsh Azure users group, and so attended one of their sort of monthly sessions and was able to ask questions there and was able to roughly understand a little bit about what was talked about, but ultimately it was just about engaging with, well, in my case, the semi-local community of that, but also just being within that saturation, I guess. Just being in that kind of sphere is really, really helpful of knowledge. The fact that you're around people who are talking about the thing you're learning about, even if it's on a higher plane or higher understanding than what you need to know. And also Microsoft do a bunch of supporting events, and one of them that I attended was this sort of Q&A session, which kind of follows flipped learning perspectives of the fact that they give you like an hour worth of a lesson or a lecture or a tutorial, whatever you'd like to call it, and then that can be done asynchronously, so in your own time whenever you'd like to do it, and then there is a scheduled 45 minute, 30-minute session with an actual Microsoft trainer. And so you can ask questions to follow up. And I asked a question and it was answered really, really well and was really, really helpful. So yeah, again, asking people and having those opportunities to be engaged in that is absolutely one of the best ways of learning. LinkedIn Learning, so the learning branch of LinkedIn, which in itself is owned by Microsoft, is unsurprisingly really, really good for teaching you about a Microsoft qualification. It's actually really good in general. LinkedIn Learning is fantastic. I really don't hear an awful lot about it, but I think the world of it. I think it's fab and free if you're a student, which is great. An actual book that I was using was Exam Ref AZ-900 Microsoft Azure Fundamentals, which is available on O'Reilly Learning, and again, I think it's fantastic. And I think I mentioned earlier, but it's like over 300 pages of stuff. While you don't have to know everything about it, like you don't have to memorize every single part of it, all of it's useful and interesting. And they've also got these really useful thought experiments where you are given a business case study for what you're learning about, and that's really useful in terms of, you know, such a company. I mean, it's Contoso because it's Microsoft, and all Microsoft companies, if they make up a fictitious thing, is Contoso. You know, they'll say Contoso need to migrate their software, but they need to keep their data in a secure, private sense. They need to keep that in-house, and you go, oh, well, this is blah, 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 cloud. I mean, blah, blah, in that case is hybrid, but, you know, whatever. You know, and to put the things that you have learned into the business perspective, into an actual use case, really, really useful, and definitely aligns with how the questions in the exam are presented. Really, really useful to be aware of. They also just found an app just to download for free called Learn Azure Skills and Career. That was pretty useful to just have. Nice thing to be aware of. Microsoft have also created a bunch of lab exercises, which are just short, you know, 10-15 minute tutorial for actual practical hands-on experience with Azure. So it's like make a virtual machine, make a private network, get to virtual machines connected to then ping one another and stuff like that. And that's really, really good because I found that I was really enjoying learning about Azure and then really hating actually using Azure because I didn't find the portal to be the most user-friendly thing from a learner's perspective. And I hope to be wrong. I hope to be proved wrong the more that I do use it, but I do feel that there are some parts of it missing for beginner support. And so having small exercises to work through, like the lab exercises, of which there are 23, I think, really, really good. I only did about 8 or 9 because I ran out of time, but if I had to recommend anything, it would be to learn Azure by doing Azure. Really, really good. And then finally, there were practice papers. So again, Cloud Ready Skills, the company who provided the free access to the exam, actually give a code for a past paper, which is used on a service called Measure Up. And that's really, really useful. I basically sat that paper. I think I was really confused about how many attempts I had at it, and ultimately ended up doing 4. I don't know if that was intended or not, but either way, I passed paper access. Or at least like, they've got like a bank of like 150 questions, and each time you do a paper, it takes 50 randomly. Anyway, and basically I would just go through and every time and review my answers afterwards, and every time I'd got one wrong, I just make a note of it in Workflowy. By the way, Workflowy is amazing, and I think everyone should use Workflowy. Yeah, Workflowy is just great. Anyway, that's a different thing. How did I find the exam? The exam was harder than I was expecting, and a lot of the prep work was harder than I was expecting. I hadn't passed a past paper until the day of the exam. Yeah, it's just there was just so much content. Like the breadth of knowledge was far exceeding my expectations. I felt that it was incredibly wide in terms of what needed to be learned. And the questions were very specific, and there would be naming. They're all multiple choice on the exam, in various different permutations. But you never have to free type anything. It's all here are the options. Choose an option. But there are just so many potential answers for it. No, there aren't. Sorry, there's only one potential answer for it. But there are so many kind of similar use cases, but you have to really understand what you're being asked, and that could be in a purely theoretical or in a business case scenario, which is again why the thought experiments from the book that I was mentioning earlier, which I can't remember if I said is available on O'Reilly Learning, but really, really good. That was those kind of questions can really throw you, especially when there's a huge amount of content to be aware of. Any hoodle. Exam was harder than expected, pretty much. But ultimately, just from going through and working like I did, it ended up, I was able to pass first time, which I'm delighted about because I hadn't done an exam for ages and it was super stressful, but it was really, really good. So what advice would I give about doing it yourself? I think one of the things that I found was that I think going through it slowly and being exactly sure of the definitions is really, really important. There's a lot of specificity of exactly what is, say, governance, or what is security, or what is privacy, or, what is compliance. Rather than just kind of being aware of them as being, oh, well, that's sort of defense, knowing that compliance means regulation within a country's laws, knowing that that's the case, is really, really important. And I don't think I'd put enough attention to detail in the initial learning. It was more or less the case of, oh, so there's a bunch of systems here. I think doing my time again, it would just be a case of going through it slowly and methodically with the definitions, because they all just build. And the more that you have strong definitions and strong understandings of those definitions, the easier everything is to kind of build up. I've put a note here, and I've already said it, but yeah, give more time. There is no way you should do it, in my opinion, in less than 2 weeks if you haven't had any Azure experience before. I'd say 3, possibly a month. If you have used it before, then that's a totally different deal, and it's just about solidifying what you're kind of aware of and probably just like formalizing it. But from someone going from naught to the exam, and being told like, oh yeah, it'll be about 8 hours if you're a developer, maybe 20 hours if you're not technically minded, if you're kind of one of the upper brass management, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I disagree with that fully from my personal experience. And it could just be me. I could just be super dumb. But, and I was sort of scattering around my learning, so it clearly wasn't the most efficient way. But I think, again, using the proof of the fact that the book itself is around 300 pages, that's not what you have to, and it's closed book, so you have to know all of these answers. You can't cheat. Not cheat. You can't look stuff up. Obviously, you can't cheat, but you can't look stuff up. You have to know it all. I think the size of that book should be a good indication of whether or not 8 hours of study is appropriate for that. But that's just me. Anyway, and the final thing, and I've already said it, but yeah, I think the best way to learn Azure is by doing stuff in Azure, like following the lab exercises, doing simple exercises, getting a feel for how things fit together. But yeah, so that is that. I just wanted to put together this video kind of as an overview for the AZ-900 exam. And yeah, I'm really, really glad that I've done it. And I look forward to doing the next one, which is going to be, I think it's called SC900, which is the security-focused one. But yeah, but that's to come. Anyway, let me know what you think about exam prep. If you've done this exam, let me know if you disagree with my kind of take on it. If you're planning to do the exam, what things you might want to ask or what things you found to be useful, feel free to just sort of leave any comments or chats in the comments below so that everyone can support everyone else in the joy of learning and getting pieces of paper that prove that you have learned. Anyway, have the best of days, and I'll see you later. All right.